Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for joining us this Labor Day. We're celebrating by bringing you two amazing shows today. If you missed today's earlier broadcast, you can find it quickly at tninformer.com. We all know that J6 was a terrible day for America. Innocent, patriotic Americans died, and at least one was murdered by our government. Instead of being prosecuted, the killer was honored. Others were viciously attacked by the Capitol Police. To be sure, there were a few bad actors in the bunch, whether they were left-wing plants or others that were manipulated, but it's obvious now the whole thing was a setup. But many other patriotic Americans were prosecuted for their alleged crimes, and many were denied due process for years and were only released after Trump took office in January 2025. Their conditions were disgusting and their treatment even worse. Some didn't survive their ordeal, and others took their own life. All paid a heavy toll financially and mentally, as did their families. For the most part, they were abandoned by their elected officials, and I don't think any of them have yet to be fairly compensated. This should have never happened in America, and certainly should never be allowed to happen again. Tonight you will meet one of those men from here in Tennessee. You will hear about what he experienced and how it impacted, as well as what he intends to do in the very near future that may have an impact on your future. J6 survivor and now congressional candidate for the 7th District of Tennessee joins us tonight. That would be Stewart Parks. First, it's time for the Informer Report. Trump loses his latest round on tariffs in the court. The tariffs will remain in effect until the Supreme Court makes a final decision in October. If the Supreme Court rules against Trump, it will be a huge loss and reduce his ability to negotiate with other countries. The court didn't agree that the trade deficit met the standard for emergency powers utilized in a law that Congress passed in the 70s, and this was a law that President Trump was citing. Now, the Constitution clearly states that tariffs are a power delegated to Congress, not the executive. Even with the legislation, it would seem like a violation of the separation of powers doctrine to give emergency powers to the president, any president. This is regardless of Trump or whoever. And so we like what he's been able to accomplish in having this emergency power, but, ultimately we have a Constitution, and we have to follow it. And if we want the president to have that authority, if it's necessary for the president to have that authority, then we need to do a constitutional amendment to change it. I know that's easier said than done. Now, he has made the comment that it was Democrat judges were against him, but he did have 4 that supported him in this case, and that he's confident that he'll win in the Supreme Court. I wouldn't bet anything on the Supreme Court one way or the other. But regardless of how partisan this may seem, it is clear in the Constitution that the power to set tariffs is a congressional power, not an executive power. And we have to be careful not to mistake liking the results. We have to be able to separate, hey, I like the result. And we can't, just because we like the result, sacrifice especially clear language in the Constitution. That's my 2 cents on that one. Trump is sending mixed messages again on Ukraine. He's still not talking about sending troops or anything, but he did authorize shipping 3,350 ERAM missiles. Those are extended range attack munitions. They have a range of 250 miles once launched from an aircraft. Now, supposedly the ERAMs will be paid for by an unnamed European country, but the fact that the U.S. shipped them directly to Ukraine rather than selling them to NATO, as Trump said he would do a few weeks ago, I'm sure that's got the attention of the Russians, and they're probably watching more to see what he does rather than what he says. And Ukraine is still not our fight, and I hope we don't get stuck in it. The Trump administration is doing all it can to ensure illegal aliens don't get federally funded housing. They can no longer leave the citizenship block blank, and all federally funded housing managers have 30 days to complete an audit and ensure that no illegal alien is getting federally funded housing. This is great news. This is great for all of us. They should have never gotten that. Use our tax dollars to house illegal aliens? That was always wrong. And I'm glad that he's doing this. And I'm sure that all of a sudden we're going to have some more housing units available that we didn't have in the past. So that's a good news story. The next announcement is, and this has to do with the recent court decision here in Tennessee in the Chancery Court of Gibson County. So rumor has it that the Tennessee AG will likely appeal the state's loss in the Hughes versus Lee case, in which a Chancery Court out of Gibson County found that the intent to go armed clause in the no guns in parks law was unconstitutional based on the Tennessee state constitution. I guess the governor and AG like spending our tax dollars against us to deny us our rights, because that's what happens when they appeal. The fact that this thing has already gone on for 2 years, that was your tax dollars being used against you to deny you your rights, even if you're not directly involved in this case. Now, our legislature as a whole could have fixed this a long time ago, but as a whole, they are all but worthless in upholding their oath and protecting our rights. We have a lot of reptiles to remove in 2026. If you want to weigh in on this, go to the Tennessee Firearms Association link to be heard on this issue. You'll see it will be labeled "Protect Our Rights, Take Action Now" to stop any appeal. This is it's at the Tennessee Firearms Association, and we have that link posted on our site as well. That wraps up this installment of the Informer Report. If you have a news story that you want to alert us to, be sure to send us an email at tninformer.tv@gmail.com. Now a little about our guest, Stewart Parks. He's a multi-generation Tennessean running as a conservative Republican to represent Tennessee's 7th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Born and raised in Middle Tennessee, he is a successful real estate developer. He developed a passion as well for saving and preserving historic properties in Tennessee. He is a graduate of Azell Harding Christian School. He holds a degree in economics from the University of Mississippi and resides in the Woodbine area. He's a member of Faith is the Victory Church and is active with the Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors. His life changed radically on June 3rd, 2021, when he was unjustly arrested by the FBI, all for the crime of participating in a peaceful rally in support of President Donald J. Trump on January 6th. After a rush conviction, Stewart was forced into federal prison under an 8-month sentence while he battled the corrupt D.C. swamp. President Trump officially and personally pardoned Stewart on the day of his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States, returning him to his family and his business, and permanently ending the radical left's effort to persecute him for exercising his First Amendment rights. Well, thank you for joining us, Stewart. How are you doing?
Doing well, sir. Thank you for having me.
Well, glad to have you. I'm glad to have you with us. Been wanting to get you on for a while, just on the J6 topic alone, and of course now you're running for Congress. Let's get right into the whole J6 thing. First off, I hate to hear about all the things that you had to go through. You and all of them. I did have another J6er on here, a friend of yours. I had Colton Maccabee a while back, and it's just totally un-American, the things that happened to you guys, and there's no excuse for it. So, but let's talk about that day, January the 6th. You were not arrested on the 6th, so let's just talk about what you saw, what happened, where you were at in that whole thing, and what you did.
Well, you summed it up perfectly. So the whole reason why we were there at the Capitol was to, be peacefully present, because the election was fraudulently stolen from us. All of America wanted Trump, and we wake up the next day, which I think was November 4th, day after the election, and Joe Biden is announced by the fake news as the president, and we're like, no way. Like, he couldn't get 10 people to show up at his rally, and Trump had sold out rallies all over the country. So we show up at the Capitol on January January 6th for an event called Stop the Steal Rally. And prior to that, we had showed up. There was a historic crowd. There's so many people. We were late hearing Trump speak, and we had heard Trump say, "Go peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol." So we followed the crowds of, peaceful patriots. They were dressed up in patriotic gear and like George Washington costumes, and very fun, very festive atmosphere. And it was a family friendly atmosphere. There were kids, families gathered, elderly, and one thing led to another. We get to the building, and I went through several lines of police officers just get to the building, and then once I got there, the doors open, I went in, and my life changed forever.
So, but from the time you guys started walking to the Capitol until you went in the building, now we know that certain places, there were people that were engaging with the police, and some of them in a bad way. And then in some cases, I mean, I've seen footage where, the police, I mean, you saw, Roseanne Boylan, she was being beaten when she was already on the ground. But what did you see? Did you see anything like that, or were you not able to see that, depending on where you are?
Well, that's a really good question. So, Colton Maccabee, who's an absolute hero, friend of mine on your show, he was on like the opposite side, like a different side of the Capitol where I was. I was on the west side, which I guess was the more subdued, like calm side. I do remember when we showed it to the Capitol, we were there for the Stop the Steal rally, and there was a stage set and nobody on there. Well, our phones were jammed because there's so many people. We didn't know that the rally was canceled. So I can remember smoke bombs and flash bangs and all kinds of stuff from the police being thrown out into the crowd. And I'm looking, from my vantage point, and there's nothing the crowd is doing to, warrant that type of behavior from the Capitol Police. So it's like the police was trying to antagonize and, poke at the crowd, so to speak.
Right.
So, my side was more, peaceful, and, we didn't have like Roseanne Boylan, for example, who's a patriot. She was beaten to death. We didn't have that on my side, extreme violence like that.
Right. And did you see anybody on our side doing anything that they shouldn't be doing from where you were at?
Yeah, I mean, from where I was, the crowd, was overwhelmingly peaceful, hanging out, super close to the police. Well, I didn't see any, anybody stabbing the police or whatever have you. And you got to think, we're nonviolent. MAGA, we love our country, patriotic. We love the police, and that's what's so confusing when you show up and the police is like, doing crowd control techniques against you. You're like, wait, what's going on here? So, it's overwhelmingly peaceful. I got asked about this in my trial. You can look up my court documents. When I took the stand, the prosecutor was asking me about, somebody I'd never met that had, had in a moment of excitement or passion did something that, not typical for MAGA patriot, but I don't know them. That everybody should have been tried based on what they did, not the
Right.
actions of the crowd. So that's what's so unconstitutional about all this.
So when you moved into the Capitol, so what led you to move into the Capitol? Were just the fact that that's where everybody was walking to, or what?
Well, that's a great question. So we get close to the building, and I try to explain this. My frame of mind, once I got there, I went through like 5, 6, 7 lines of police officers just to get to the building, and the police was, totally fine with it. Didn't try to stop us, didn't tell us to stop, that sort of thing. And then once I get to the doors open. Now I later learned that a peaceful event attendee had gone in through another way and opened the doors and let us in, but I didn't know that. And once I was led into the building, the Capitol Hill Police, they greeted us. They said things like, "We're with you, we hear you, we understand you." They never once told me to get out. They never told me stop. They never threatened to arrest us. And this whole time, people were taking selfies with the cops and
Right.
having friendly conversations with the police. So they never once told me to get out.
Okay. So you went, how far into the Capitol did you go, or what part of the Capitol did you go to? And I've never been inside, so I'm not familiar with it. But how you went through the door? Where did you go from there? How far in? And at what point in time, if any, during that day inside the Capitol, did you finally have let's say, a negative interaction with law enforcement?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I believe by the court documents, I was in the building for about 30 to 40 minutes. And again, when I walked in, I just followed the crowds. This wasn't a plan. This wasn't an insurrection. This wasn't a planned insurrection. This wasn't, a violent overthrow of the government. We were just peacefully present.
Right.
And, once we're in, we just walked through. It's a lot of narrow halls, and it was like a maze. And I
Right.
just happened to stumble across. I remember seeing Jacob Chantley, the famous QAnon shaman, the guy with the horns and the
Yeah.
tattoo. And
Yeah.
he was subdued. I mean, he was law abiding, nice guy. I didn't see him do anything that was scary or worth going to prison over. And so really the only time was when the National Guard showed up 30 to 40 minutes later after I had entered the building. They made it clear that we needed to vacate, which we peacefully and willingly complied. We left the
Okay.
building, took some photos, sang outside, and went home.
So what were you actually charged with?
Well, I was charged with 5 federal misdemeanors, and it was the typical. There were basically 3 buckets how they were charging people. Mine was on the lower end, the federal misdemeanor, and it had to do with trespassing on Capitol grounds and restricted ground, parading on Capitol and restricted ground. And they got charged with a theft charge because I picked up a metal detector wand and was being silly with it, and I put it back in the general area, and the judge ruled that I deprived the Capitol Hill police of the use of that wand, so he found me guilty. It's so crazy.
Was there Capitol Police around there any time at that point in time?
No,
Nobody
there
said, "Hey, give me."
wasn't.
So when you put it down, you just put it down on your own. There was nobody there that said, "Hey, put that down." There was no police officer there, but you were on tape. So you were
Exactly.
on tape depriving them of the use of a wand that, oh, by the way, they are probably signed for and lost control of and left it laying around, right?
Yeah, well, they left it right beside the metal detector security area, and I was again shouldn't have picked it up, but I didn't steal it. I was just being silly with it
Right.
and waving it around, and I put it back down in the general area, and it was because on my own accord, like I put it down.
Right.
Right there. And the Capitol Hill police testified at my trial, said nothing was stolen. They had the inventory list, and they still found me guilty of theft.
So how long was your sentence?
So I was sentenced to 8 months in federal prison, and I only did 5 months and 10 days in prison. I got out early for good behavior.
Okay. So where did they send you?
They sent me to FCI Memphis, which was formerly a medium, and it had just downgraded to a low security. So I was part of the effort to, downgrade the security, if you will.
Okay. So what were the conditions like there?
Oh, it was so bad. Because again, I've never committed a crime a day in my life, and I know you and your viewers are law-abiding citizens. So this was just a shock to me. I didn't know what the difference between a medium and a low. Medium security, that's where like people serving life sentence, murderers go. And I guess, and again, Memphis was a medium. It had just downgraded to a low, and they sent me and others. Low security inmates there, and I mean they still had like medium attitudes, like the guards were from the medium days were still there. It was just a dilapidated third world prison. Every time it rained, my cell flooded. It just seemed like every building flooded. Like I'm not even joking. When you go to the cafeteria, that you almost trip over tiles, getting in line for food because there was nothing to stop the water from pouring in the prison. Very depressing, sad place. I almost went 2 weeks without electricity in my pitch black cell because the wiring was just so messed up.
Wow. So okay, the medium security guards, what kind of treatment? I mean, obviously they weren't smiley happy people there by any means, but what kind of interactions did you have with them?
Well, that's a really good question. So some of the other January 6 heroes had really awful treatment in other prison. For me, I had started prison February 6th of 2024. So you got to think that's several years into this whole unfortunate series of events. So I had sort of heard stories, So bottom line, I stayed away from the guards,
Right.
And I was yes ma'am, no ma'am polite. And I do remember one story almost getting written up, like thrown in the shoe, because the Biden administration's handling of the prison was so bad. They thought I didn't have a high school diploma, and they were forcing me to go take a GED. And it was just, it was just so unfortunate.
So now, wait a minute. January 6, 2021, but you weren't arrested until June of 21?
Correct. It was June 3rd of 2021 at 5:53 a.m. in the morning. That's when the FBI raided me. Now, it's a miracle of God. Again, a lot of people, there was a lot of heroes that went to January 6th, didn't commit any crime, and they told lies about them at their bond hearing. So they had to stay in trial, or stay in prison or jail until their trial started. Now, with me, it was a miracle. They said I was nonviolent and didn't tear up anything, so I got released that same day, and just complied with the pretrial release restrictions. But yeah, I didn't start prison until February 6th of 2024. So you calculate that, that's the whole time Biden's in office. I have my constitutional rights taken away. It's wild.
So you were able. So let's talk about the morning they arrested you. I mean, they come in at 5:53 in the morning. Did they just bust down the door or pound on the door, or what did they do?
Yeah, it was so wild. All they had to do, when I tell this story, you got to think, all they had to do, they could just called me and said, "Hey, we want you to come in, self-surrender." They didn't do that. They sent the counterterrorism unit in full body armor, machine gun grade weapon, and kicked down, busted in my door at a project I was working on in Columbia, Tennessee. And I remember waking up and I could hear boom, 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 FBI, come up with your hands up. And before I could even get out of bed, glass is flying everywhere in the living room, and the doors kicked in, and they're now in the living room pointing their rifles into my bedroom door, and they're screaming arrest instruction, which I, willingly complied, because I guarantee you they had the safety off, and any type of sudden jerk, they would have shot me right there on the spot.
And see, that's flat out wrong, to kick in somebody's door. I mean, okay, I got it. Get there early in the morning before they go off somewhere. But you knock on the door. Okay, and if you think they're going to run, then you can have somebody waiting around the back or whatever. But this kicking in the door garbage, that's just totally un-American, and they do it all the time. I've seen things on TV. And I'm not talking movies. I'm talking about either documentaries or when the different cop shows where they knock real loud and they announce. And there's no time given for anybody to answer the door. Then they're kicking in the door. They're coming in. The people are half asleep, and if you can't comprehend exactly what's going on when you're half asleep, and you think, "Wow, somebody's busting in on me," and you go for a gun, you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
That I tell you what, that should be outlawed. That should never happen. That should never happen, especially in this kind of situation. That really irritates me, that they do that kind of garbage and that we allow it and call it good police work. It's irritating. Anyway, so after that, you basically made bond and you were waiting for your trials. So you were able to work before you went to prison then, right?
Correct. So I did just a few hours in the county jail in Davidson County, and they let me on my own bond. And that whole time, again, had good behavior, so they never had any issues with me. I never got my bond revoked, and got sent to jail. Went to fight the swamp in prison, and the whole time they're pressuring me, trying to get me to plead guilty. And what's sad about that is when you plead guilty, there has to be some sort of statement made to the effect of you have remorse or you're sorry or Trump was wrong, that type of stuff. And I was absolutely not going to go along with that. And I didn't even in my sentencing, I didn't apologize, which is kind of typical. You see on court TV, the defendant will make an apology statement. And I told my attorney, I was like, no way, I'm not apologizing for January 6th. So I basically just told the judge, for the purpose of my appeal, I won't make a statement, and sat back down. And that's when he sentenced me to 8 months in federal prison.
Okay. So once you were in there, I mean, you did the 8 months, but you actually only did 5. What about the legal process in there? And it sounds like it, I won't say worked okay for you, but I know it was a whole lot worse for other people that, maybe they weren't allowed to post bond or had such a crazy bond. So yours was apparently not outrageous.
Oh, the stories I hear, like when I'm speaking at January 6th event, it's shocking. Like the Colton Maccabee story, I encourage everybody to listen to his story because it's just appalling. Like I can remember I was in prison, I think, when he got sentenced. I remember getting January 6th letter sent to me, updating me with his case. And there was a time there I thought they were going to send him to my prison because I would have welcomed him and,
Right.
have him been my cellmate and everything. And it unfortunately didn't work like that. Like they were treating him so bad,
Yeah.
sending him far away. And that's a huge punishment what they did because, now his family's got a huge burden of expenses to
Right.
go far away and visit him. Whereas mine, I mean, still Memphis is not, it's far away from Nashville. And my parents, let's see, we asked at my sentencing, could I be put in a prison near my house? And, the best they could do was Memphis. My codependent went to Lexington, which was, a little bit better. It was a medical prison and a lot of the inmates were subdued. But the prison I went to, it's just so wild. Like just the gang activity and
Did they keep
just,
you
man.
separate from that, or did they throw you in there with that?
Well, I was I was out in the prison yard. You know what I'm saying? Like the only option is go in the prison yard or be sent to the SHU in solitary housing. And my when I was sent to prison, it was after the COVID protocol had been lifted because a lot of these other January 6 heroes, what the deal was, if you went to prison, you had to stay 14 days in solitary confinement for quarantine, and then when when you tested okay, positive, or to go out in the yard, then they would let you out. And my codependent, he said it was awful. Like there's stories about people talking to themselves, like just going crazy because you don't have any human contact, nothing for 14 days. And thank God that had lifted by the time I went to started my prison date. But these stories are just totally heartbreaking.
Right. Yeah. I like I said, I had Colton Maccabee on here, and if those of you who haven't seen that interview, it's definitely worth looking at. It hasn't been all that long, but I know that he had a very rough time and was moved several places, and none of them closer to home, from what I can recall. So you didn't have it as bad, but you should not have had to have gone through all of this. And question for you: did any elected official in Tennessee reach out to you or your family during all this?
Well, I'm thankful. That's a good question because Andy Ogles, he wrote a letter while I was in prison. He sent a letter to the judge demanding I be released, sent to a camp, whatever have you. And that left wing warden, he sent a letter to the warden, and the warden was like not having. I don't even know if he responded to Andy Ogles' letter, which is totally unfortunate. But I really appreciate him. I think Matt Gates and Andy Biggs and several others had joined in with Andy Ogle. So I'm so thankful for Andy, doing that for me because it's just, we other January 6 heroes I talked to, like their representative, whatever have you, people in the federal government, it seemed like we were forgotten. And I'm really thankful for Andy Ogles and Matt Gates and everyone at that time for writing that letter.
So, but Andy is your U.S. rep, right?
There was a huge redistricting at the time. Let's see, that was, let me think. Bottom line, before the district changed in 2022, I was in District 5. And so when it changed, I was absorbed into District 7. And so I'd ran in the 2022 primary and developed a friendship with Andy Ogles. And he's a great guy. And just so thankful for him taking time to write that letter to the warden because that communist warden, like he was not open and he had the authority. All he had to do was just, he could have released me or whatever have you. And he refused to do so.
Okay. So how did all this change you? I mean, this has got to have some impact on you, good, bad, or ugly.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Mr. Vance, because, I saw evil like face to face, like at the Capitol, like on January 6th, just, how the Capitol Hill police, like with Colton McAbee's story and many others, like they let us in the building and then they lie to the American public and, talk about how bad people we are and, all this stuff that we didn't do and try to turn the whole public against us. And then, they tried to throw Trump in prison. And I mean, it makes you a better person, makes you talk tougher. But at the same time, this is why I'm in the race because I don't want to go back to 2020 and the Biden reign of terror. And I don't want anybody to go through what I went through in January 6th. Like these people are evil. The swamp, it needs to be drained. And Trump's done a great job. But there's still many people that need to be released. Be fired from the swamp. Yeah.
So do you think this experience gives you what you have been through? Do you think this gives you an advantage maybe over some of the other I don't want to skip too far ahead on the race, but do you think it gives you an advantage over the other candidates in the 7th District race? And if so, how?
Yes, sir. I believe it does. I mean, it makes you tough. Going through January 6th, the whole world was against us. Even like close family member that knew me, the CNN was saying one thing. All the fake news was talking about, how I stormed the Capitol and all this stuff. And, they deceived the whole world. So now, I'm trying to like put out fires and save my reputation and my life and income streams. And, it makes you a really, really tough person. At the same time, it shows you who your real friends are, going through a extreme false accusation like this. So
Right.
the voters know that I'm the real deal. I went to prison for being a Christian conservative Republican. So people love it. I talk to voters and they're like, oh yeah, I'm putting a yard sign in my yard just because you were there on January 6th. So
Right.
it's been positive.
So what did you learn about the prison system that surprised you the most?
Well, so much. I mean, we need prison reform so bad. It's just the Biden administration again. They would use like diversity hires and just all kind. I mean, I could go on and on how bad the prison system is. Again, so I'll tell you for a perfect example. I didn't know that there's a really bad trend of people not being released on their release date. I stayed in prison 10 days longer than I was supposed to because they just couldn't get me out of there. And it's wild to think about. And it cost the taxpayers so much money housing these inmates. And Peter Navarro, he was thrown in prison by the same judge I had. And he wrote a letter talking about how, the prison system has gone rogue and they're not following the laws of Congress. And I saw it where many inmates, got worse while they were in prison. And, I love prisoners. It's supposed to be a time of, people graduating, if you will, turning from their old way of life, learning where they went wrong, that type of stuff. But we're not supposed to be torturing prisoners. And that's the way they did in my prison and many others. And it's a third world prison. The system was, the environment was just so toxic. In terms of, just rain coming in and all this stuff and, just violence and drugs. There was drugs everywhere in the prison system. It's insane. You're in prison. You're not supposed to be able to, get the drugs you had on the street. There were more drugs in prison than out on the streets.
Now that tells me there's got to be people that are running it that are compromised. That's the only thing. That's the only way it could get in is some of the people running it are compromised. Has to be.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I've heard stories about guards being affiliated, and what that means is they're part of a gang that's in a prison gang, and they make a lot of money. And these guards, they don't have to join these criminal organizations to make money. They're unionized. They already make a lot of money, just working, just sticking with their job, but they keep, smuggling, making thousands, bringing cell phones and drugs and all kinds of stuff in. So it's really, really corrupt.
So do you have any legal recourse for anything that happened to you? Or are you just going to have to be happy with the pardon you got?
I'm very thankful that Donald Trump pardoned me. I'm so thankful because life was, just hellacious. I can remember coming into the country several times, for instance, and being interrogated by the border police because of my January 6th charges, and that just was a recurring theme, and so forth. Having my charges being political in nature, just constant government surveillance. And when I got pardoned, it was wild. I was getting letters from the government saying I was taken off these lists, and I'm like, I didn't even know I was on these lists.
Didn't know you were on them. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So everything was expunged then?
Correct. I got my clean record back. It's like it never happened. And it's kind of something cute I usually like to say is on the Trump certificate, the pardon document, it says a forgiveness of, charges or whatever. And I always like to say I did not commit a crime because, to forgive, that means somebody has to do something and you
Right.
wipe it away. There was no crime committed on January 6th, but I'm happy I take the pardon anyway.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to haggle over details.
That's right.
So obviously you're running, but are you back full bore with your real estate business? Is that what you're doing when you're not on the campaign trail?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. I love real estate. It's a passion of mine, and God blessed me with a great real estate career, and I love preserving Tennessee properties, historic properties. So, it's come second nature to me, and thank God I was able to resume my real estate career after getting out of prison.
Okay, I know a lot of J6ers, or I've read about a lot of them that after they get out, it's they have nothing. They're almost blacklisted, and
You're
they
right.
really struggle to get back on their feet. Especially, I'm sure it's worse if they live in a blue state. I'm at least in a red state. I think most people, and I know there were a few that probably did some things they shouldn't have done, but nothing was done up there that I'm aware of from the pro-Trump crowd, and I'm excluding any plants, excluding anything like that. That was number one that should result in them not getting due process, and number two, I mean, some of them had long sentences, crazy long sentences for even what may have been a crime. It's got to be. I don't think enough has been done on that issue of the people that were persecuted on January 6th and after. It's like the FBI was hunting people down a year, 2 years later. It's just crazy. I don't think the J6 community overall has been treated fairly, not just then, but I mean since then. I think more needs to be done for them.
Yes, I agree. You said it perfectly. So many January 6th events I speak at, it just breaks my heart. Like, one inmate, one gentleman actually knew him from last time I saw him we were in prison together, and then we were reunited at a January 6th event here recently. And bless his heart, I mean, he's struggling, like about to lose his house, and it's so heartbreaking. Like I keep referring to Colton Maccabee. I mean, he's a great guy, a dear friend of mime. And he told me he lost his house. Like, and I'm in real estate, and I understand, like, real estate is so competitive.
Right.
Everybody's trying to move to Tennessee. Like, it's a miracle of God to get a property, and then the way he lost it the way he did. Like, it's just crushing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a miracle of God. Like, thank God my parents took over my companies while I was locked up, and they did a marvelous job, running things, and I was able to get back into it once I got out.
Okay. So let's talk about the race. We've got your website, and we've got some of the issues that you believe in. If we go ahead and pop that up there, and we can look through it and talk about it a little bit, then I've got a couple other race-related questions for you. So this is your website, parksfortennessee.com, and then we've got all the different issues. One of your issues, wow, imagine that, free speech.
Yeah. Yeah, we need it. Very big on that. If you don't have free speech, you don't have a country, and that's why we were there January 6th, to be peacefully present, to speak to the world and to Congress that, hey, this is a fraudulent election. You need to kick those ballots back, and unfortunately they didn't, and we just went through the 4 worst years, and it didn't like we were ever going to get our country back, because once you commit election fraud, you got to keep doing it to stay in power.
Yep.
And there was never going to be another fair election again. It's just a miracle we beat them in 2024.
Yep. And we'll go to the next. There we go. Main Street values.
Yes, sir. I love the 7 district, 14 counties. That the people, when I hand out my flyers, I always put Main Street values, and people love it. I mean, they gravitate to that statement because that identifies with them. These small towns, I think we talked about it earlier, like Davidson County, Nashville, it's just becoming so woke and communist, and the rest of the counties don't want that. They want Main Street values. So I'm very big on that, preserving our Tennessee communities and the rural areas outside of Davidson County.
Yeah, we need a fence around Nashville.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. America first.
Yes, sir. Well, that's my motto, and my slogan is putting America first means putting you first. So when you see the words American first, your listeners, that means putting you first. And so, that's anything from the economy to immigration. It tears me up seeing illegals come in, and, they're treated like they get preference over citizens that have been here, that are here legally, and that goes from anywhere to government programs to housing to anything, you name it. So I'm strictly American first. I want these illegals deported ASAP.
I think most of us do.
Yes, sir.
The border?
Which again, I mean, this ties in American first. So you have to ask yourself, well, how these illegals are, how are they getting in? And with the Biden administration, they had open border policies. They say they didn't, and they're lying. You could, just come in, skip across the border, and just disappear in the United States, and nobody know anything about you or where you went and so forth. And this is why I'm really big on this. I can see things that my opponents can't, and I'm not mudslinging. What I'm saying is, when I was in prison, these inmates, these foreign gangs that I was in prison with, we knew nothing about them. They could have been, a lot of them maybe been in, had a simple marijuana charge with a gun in the car. So, that's a federal charge. So that's why they're in the prison with me. But you don't know about the 20 something people they killed back in Mexico.
Right.
And then they come over the border and have a gun and, firearm charge. So these people, you don't want them in your country. I'm serious.
Oh, I agree. I believe you.
Yeah.
Farmers.
Yeah. I love District 7. My grandfather, he was a farmer out in Barren Plains. And so, my heart goes out to the farmers because they've been mistreated so long with these, these other countries competing against our farmers. We have the best farmers in the whole world. And these idiots get in Congress and they enact all these laws and policy that favor other farmers. So our farmers have been, crippled and anemic for way too long. So that's why I'm for tariff other country, because I'm an economic major, so I understand they use currency manipulation and other things to make their economy, stronger and all this stuff and try to outcompete our farmers. So we can't have that anymore. And again, District 7, I get along with our farmers very, very well, and I'm very pro-farmer.
Okay. Life.
The reason why that's there and a big priority for me is I want everybody to enjoy life. We're not supposed to be barely struggling, through our life with, economic issues and family issues. And, people should be able to go to church, enjoy, their pastor and, come home and live, great godly lives. And you shouldn't be able to see the lewd act by these, LGBTQ protesters and stuff that they do on the sidewalk. And, there's that. And then, you should be able to, I've been to where I love college football and I'd go to college football games and they would have woke propaganda there at the football game and it like ruins the experience. So I'm against anything woke and left wing that's trickling into all facets of life, whether it's education, social spheres, family, anything, government. So that's why I put that.
Well, government certainly shouldn't be promoting anything like that, and we know they have in the past. And even our state has not, in my opinion, been strong enough against those type things. You go look on our state website, and you may not see any of the pro LGBT stuff now, but there are definitely some left wing ideas that are still promoted on our state website. So. That's a problem.
And you bring it, and I'm thankful you bring that up because you're right. They're not. You don't see it prominently come out and say it, but you look around, you see our capital, which I understand. The good people in Stewart County love Stewart County, and that's the priority. But you got to understand, Nashville's your capital. Nashville is the capital of anybody in Davidson, just as much as anybody in Stewart County. And they're doing these lewd gay pride parades and all this mess on your state capital. So no, that's not okay. And I loved Cracker Barrel, but you look at all this woke stuff they've gotten themselves into, right, and the money they spend, like they were spending on the gay pride parade in Nashville, and they had like kids zone and all this inappropriate stuff. So very upset with Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. Granted, that's a private entity, so you can't really stop them from doing certain things. But I think way too many things that we allow to happen in public, allow to happen in our schools, they're mischaracterized as First Amendment issues, and I think a lot of that is some perverted Supreme Court opinions, especially in the late 60s and early 70s. So and I understand, like say, when it comes to private entities, the government has to have limits on what it can do as far as what it can say about, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. But I think the courts have perverted that just beyond. I mean, for instance, obscenity laws. Even if something is obscene, to determine something's obscene in the classroom, well, we use a court-created construct called the Miller, I think it's the Miller doctrine or the Miller method or whatever, of deciding if it's obscene. Well, I think a state can decide if something's obscene. I don't think we need to refer to some Supreme Court construct to determine if something is obscene. So there's a lot of things that government creates a lot of problems, no doubt, and the courts are a big part of that. So,
well, you're exactly right, and I've seen it where these far left groups commit lewd acts in the public, and they get away with it because they do it in the name of a parade or
First
protesting
Amendment,
or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, and if someone did those lewd acts in front of a child in any other setting, they would be thrown in prison, for pedophilia, like weird stuff. But yeah, you said it right with these weird perverted Supreme Court decisions years ago.
Yeah, we haven't gotten rid of them because we got to keep them until they change their mind 50 years down the line.
Yeah.
So now economy, talk a little bit about that.
Yes, sir. So graduated with an economic degree. I'm very, pro free market. I believe if the free market, allows it or, funds it or wants it, it'll flourish. We don't need government program and government to keep, dying businesses and ideas alive. And so I'm for low taxes, low regulations. And one of the things I've talked about taking away is these capital gain tax. Anybody like Mr. Vance goes to buy stocks or real estate and then wants to sell it, he's going to get slapped with a 36% capital gain tax. And that's so evil because Mr. Vance took the time to, time and energy to go, find a deal, buy it, use his money, and then the government steals from him. That's so wrong.
Right. Absolutely. Way too many taxes out there and way too high of a rate. I want to back up just a second because we talked about courts a minute ago, and I didn't. I intended to ask some of the same questions to you that I asked to Representative Bolso and Representative Barrett, and I failed to include those in there. But I'm going to ask you one that I actually didn't get around to asking them. Mm-hmm. Trump has been blocked a lot by the court, and a lot of lower federal courts. He's had some wins and some losses in the Supreme Court, but the Constitution gives, under Article 3, Section 2, allows Congress to restrict the appellate jurisdiction of all federal courts, the Supreme Court and any other federal court. Matter of fact, the Congress can do away with whole courts. I mean, by the Constitution, we only have to have the Supreme Court. That's all we have to have. And oh, by the way, they don't have to have any appellate jurisdiction. They could have they have to have original jurisdiction for the limited objects that are identified in the Constitution. But with all of the judicial activism going on, and they create things out of whole cloth, often to try to stifle President Trump. I mean, it's really a lot of it is directed at Trump. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything he does. I think there's things he's overstepped on, but the courts are out of control. If you're elected, would you at least look into sponsoring a bill that restricts the appellate jurisdiction of federal courts?
The answer is yes. Anything woke dies, and we can't have, woke, as you said, woke activist judges, mingling and putting their own agendas into important, decisions. And, the court seat is sacred. That's what, irks me about the trial I went through. And this is what stands me out from other candidates, because I actually, faced the swamp head on in their home field, if you will. And it's so wild how, they're actually not smart. Like, they're really not. I can remember the Obama-appointed judge that sentenced me or read my verdict. He called me by the wrong name. So technically, I like to make the joke that I never got found guilty for January 6th because, he was screaming, berating me, and then he stormed out of the courtroom. And the whole time he's saying another person's name. So he didn't even properly sentence me. But where I'm going with that is, like, these people are so dangerous, and the prosecutors woke, the defense attorneys woke, the judges woke. So they're just not smart. They just push things through, and we can't have that. We want brilliant scholars in Constitution experts in those seats. So there very realistically could come a time where we got to take a look at something like you just said to
Yeah.
preserve the interest of justice.
Right. And a lot in Congress, I've heard him say, well, or in government, I've heard him say, well, the Supreme Court needs to rein in these lower courts. No, we don't have to wait on the Supreme Court. Matter of fact, they need to be reined in on a lot of things. The Constitution, Article 3, Section 2, Congress sets their jurisdiction. The only thing they do not set is the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. I think that was all of your issues on your website, but I've got a few other questions. Second Amendment?
Oh, great question. So I'm very pro-gun. I said this on 99.7, and voters I talk to, they come support me in large numbers because if you can recall, there was this erroneous unconstitutional ruling and decision that came out some time ago that criminals couldn't carry firearms. Well, I got news for you. They view Christians, conservatives, Republicans as the criminal. So when that got became law, they now can use, like we talked about, activist judges to find us guilty and then disarm us. So I'm very big on, and I've said this too, I've seen this like when I was in prison, there'd be inmate that made a mistake when they were younger and now they're grandpa age and they've lived a good life, but they can't protect their grandkids that have come over to their house because they can't carry a firearm. And I've seen it where people I did prison time with, they did something they shouldn't have done and should have had a state charge, but because they had a hunting rifle in the closet, they were charged like collective possession. So now they're in the federal prison with me. So we got all these idiotic, gun prosecution that land people in prison that shouldn't be in prison. So I'm very big on the Second Amendment and interpreting the Constitution as it's written.
So there should be no infringements. I mean, bottom line, it's pretty clear. No infringements. And so we have this one three-letter agency, the ATF. Would you support at least getting the F out of the ATF?
Absolutely. My district, very rural. And again, I love the police. Thank God for the police. What I'm saying is, if somebody wants to come kill you, you don't have time to call the police and then, wait 5, 10, 15 minutes for the cops to show up. You got to stand your ground, especially, you being the man of the house and you got wife and kids, in another part of the house and they're destined to be killed too. Like, you got to act quick. So, and I've seen it too, these unfair George Soros prosecutors go after, people for being heroes and, they have the gun and they use it legally, but these prosecutors just, have a woke jury pool and they can find, innocent Americans found guilty and throw them in prison for, for being innocent and using Second Amendment laws to self-defense laws. So, yeah, I mean, government agencies, they've got to stay out. They got to stay away from, hurting gun owners and, taking away gun rights. It's insane. We need our guns.
So we've talked about the issues you believe in, but what are your goals? Do you have a couple of goals that you want to accomplish if you're elected?
Yes, sir. So I'm a man of my word, and I did say it on the air on your program that I really want these high taxes, such as the capital gains tax, done away with. I want it zero, and we'll see if Congress wants to, if they have the appetite to give, to take away extremely high taxes like that. So I want to see capital gains tax down to zero. We got to undo everything that the Biden administration and the Obama administration imposed on us. I want to see same-sex marriage done away with, a moratorium on all, same-sex marriage licenses. Marriage is only between a man and a woman. Obama brought that on the scene, I think, back in 2008, and that's just been a total disaster.
The courts did that. Yeah. And, all of our cowardly states, including the governor of our state at the time, Bill Haslam, they all folded. They all just rolled over and said, oh, okay, we'll do it because the court said. So, I would like to see, really the states have to make that stand. But, if legislation is saying, look, marriage is and has always been a state issue, if nothing else.
Exactly. So we got to roll that back. I'm very happy about the Roe versus Wade being overturned. I mean, that's a huge step in the right direction. I've said this on another program. What's happened now is these left-wing woke states that still kill babies, they have basically abortion tourism, and that's a term I use. And that now, if you want to kill your baby, you can get a company sponsorship or some sort of funding to go kill your baby in another state. So the abortion's still happening, and I've seen it where state of Tennessee is fighting the abortion pill. I guess if you want to kill your baby, you can get a pill mailed to you. So I want zero abortion. That's the vision.
Well, there should be something, because you're talking the mail. The mail that's a function of the U.S. government. So there should be there's certain things you can't send in the mail. That could easily be made one of them. Hey, you cannot send this in the mail. That should not be that hard. So
exactly.
Any other closing thoughts?
Well, I'm thankful, Mr. Vance, for you having me on your wonderful show. It's been an honor talking with you. And, if anybody want to learn more about me, they go to my social media, watch this program, go to the website. And I'd love to have everybody's vote on October 7th. And remember, putting America first means putting you first.
Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show. Good luck to you. Now, you'll be in Houston County this Thursday at their Reagan Day event. I guess they're going to have a forum there with you and the other candidates, and you'll be in Stewart County on the 11th.
Yes, sir. We love Stewart County. Dover is a very special place, and look forward to being out there, especially Stewart County being spelled the same as my first name. It's a very special place.
All right. Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing you. And once again, thanks for coming on the show, and good luck to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell, so you never miss an episode. By the way, we did go over 700 subscribers now. Appreciate that. That happened since the last show earlier today. And we're also now attempting to get some traction back on Rumble, so appreciate those of you viewing us on Rumble. We appreciate your support. Thanks to Jonathan and Mary for their financial support for the month of July and August. We really appreciate it. Check out our audio podcasts on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, tninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Got a few announcements for you. The Stewart Henry County TFA chapter will meet this Thursday, 7 p.m. at the Stewart County Visitor Center. Our speaker will be Arthur Hampton of the John Birch Society. You don't have to be a member to attend. So if you don't know anything about the John Birch Society, or if you've heard some things and you want to find out if they're true, that's the place for you to be this Thursday, 7 p.m. at the Visitor Center. The TFA will hold its annual fundraiser this Saturday, September 6th, at the Farm Bureau Expo Center, also known as the James E. Ward Agricultural Center, at 945 East Batter Lane, Lebanon, Tennessee. General Flynn will be the guest speaker. You can still get tickets at TennesseeFirearms.com. The Stewart County Republican Party will hold their annual Reagan-Trump dinner at the Stewart County Visitor Center on September 11th. Doors open at 5:30, and the dinner is served at 6 p.m. We'll have a candidate forum for the 7th District. Tickets are $25 per, or a table of 6 for $120. Call Dave at 931-237-1026 for tickets. Next Monday evening at 7 p.m., our guest will be Vanessa Miller, here to inform us of some very suspicious activity and some disturbing claims about the nonprofit Isha. Our second guest next Monday, 8:30 p.m., will be Pastor Sharam Hadian, a convert to Christianity from Islam, who leads the Truth in Love ministry. He'll discuss the threat of the Red-Green Alliance and the reality of Muslims and Marxists working together to take down America. You need to hear this. Hope you can join us. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.